Alright, good morning. Just thought I'd do another update on Bitcoin because we're getting obviously a bit of volatility up here. What is there to say? Okay, so haven't quite hit where I wanted to hit as my next level of interest, which was a little bit higher. And I still at the moment have a sense we're going to come back there, although we are starting to show some downward structure here. Well, mixed. So on the 3-day, we did create a weak 3-day demand. And this is one of the ones that the type of structure that you would potentially see flip. So the green candle's closed over the red candle, but has swing failed the highs. So it's very possible that this is going to flip and then take out the lows. And maybe I can see an example from previously, but probably not now. No, without searching too long. So I guess at the moment, so I'm still bullish while we're still in this range, and I'm still bullish while we're in the range, and then while we're obviously still above this weak 3-day demand. But obviously we've retested, we came down hard yesterday, we've retested, and take out that 2-day for now, and then we're coming down relatively hard for a second time. There is the possibility, so we also created a daily demand just by a hair there as well, but again that hasn't held for more than a brief bounce, and we've now created an 8-hour supply, and we'll probably create a 12-hour supply shortly. So obviously we've got local structure saying down, but bigger structure is still, and obviously the macro structure is still up. This is obviously a level of interest, this weekly, or there's a 3-weekly where I was originally looking for shorts to come in, and potentially we can still swing fail that on the 3-weekly, which is still another 11 days to close anyway. But like I said, I would have preferred a move slightly higher before that happened, because there's a CME gap. So in my last video I commented there's a CME gap that's very slightly higher, and the 3-day on CME is significantly higher, but CME did again close the week underneath its weekly swing fail level. So it's kind of hit and miss, like there's signs that we could drop from here now on the lower time frames, but we're still within the range, so there's nothing definitive. Korea still remains a little bit stronger, didn't create a 3-day demand in there because of the differing structure. The premium was a lot higher last week, and then it would have just not changed because we've been sideways since then. And yeah, again, might create 2-day, 1-day supply above. So again, we're just looking really for where today is going to close. I wasn't really watching price action yesterday because I had multiple appointments. So I don't really know what the buyers are doing, and what Coinbase is doing, to know whether they're stepping in still or not. And you know, even if they are, that doesn't mean we're not going to drop down into this daily. So my next alert is just in a very obvious daily demand zone below. So that would be, you know, a nice clean and easy bounce. I think I've got my lower time frame entry, like the alerts, just above the daily, but my entry for the lower time frames on the 4-hour, just because it might be a bit cleaner. It looks a little bit cleaner on that time frame. And then secondly, the next, again, relatively obvious, I think it's a 12-hour zone just below, and I've got the entry on the 4-hour. This will be a coincide with a retest of the previous high. So there's sort of the two immediate levels I'm looking at for a bounce, or zones should I say, because obviously it can come wherever it wants inside there, and you're looking for the reaction as and when it hits, and ideally in confluence with Ether. This one, I think also, yeah, the CME wick didn't quite fill a gap down here, so that was why I was also looking at that from a CME perspective. I haven't looked in a huge amount of detail at where the points of control are and things like that. Maybe I'll just throw that one here quickly, to see if there's anything. I mean, BitMEX isn't necessarily the most reliable on this. Okay, so there is a point of control down at 47,340, so that'll be a bit lower. And yeah, looking at that now, actually that's very possible. I'll leave that alert up there for now, but it's very possible even that it comes into this because it hasn't been tested and has the point of control there. plus then would take out, what's that, previous week's low. So yeah, it's still, you know, when you started going up this much again, you know, it's almost like, so we're guessing where the top is and now really guessing which zone is going to be picked up for a bounce. So from a fib perspective, that's why I've chosen the original one, the 70% fib from this last up move from last week. And then the next fib from this sort of bottom of this consolidation comes in at 78. I don't really like that second fib too much. But also, like I say, once it starts breaking one, then it becomes, to some extent, again, you're guessing which zone is going to hold below. And if there are multiple zones, you also run the risk of this happening and it coming all the way through because it doesn't have walls or nowhere to bounce particularly. But really, until we break this daily one, I'm not really going to make any other judgments. Until and if we break that daily one, try and see if I find an example over here. So yeah, I guess you can see here, when it's rejected, it's come through, it hasn't quite hit demand down there, but it's taken out the immediate demand on wicks before bouncing. And it, you know, it does tend to give you like triple bottom kind of structures to get in on, but yeah, cross that bridge and we come to it, and then you're looking for supply, what supply has been made and what supply to break. And what will be interesting is if we do drop down into here today, then potentially we can create 2-day supply at the close of today. 3-day will be another couple of days away, but then we'll have a 2-day supply in here, we'll have a daily supply, yeah, so then we're looking at more better structures for potentially dropping harder. Not much else on that, sorry the chart is so messy. From again, the US dollar dominance perspective, again I wanted lower and I had set an alert actually just for that 3-day. But again it's pushing through, but still it's also made the reciprocal 3-day supply. So it's just fumbling with that at the moment. Again, slightly stronger than the Bitcoin one, but still weak. And again, so just looking like, are we going to make a new 2-day demand now? Are we going to flip? You know, are we going to make a 12-hour demand here, and is it going to hold? So obviously be aware that on US dollars, that while it can look strong, it then can rapidly come back down again if it wants to. And as I said in my video yesterday, you know, we rejected off a weekly supply up here, and we've now got 2 and 3 weekly supply here, which is where the 2 and 3 weekly demand is on Bitcoin. So yeah, it doesn't mean we can't get a 10,000 drop on Bitcoin, but ideally we weren't quite at the ideal levels that I wanted. But then, like I say, this is, so from the 53k perspective, we did have, so I was looking at Tensor earlier, it's going to load for me now, yeah. So Binance, let's go up to 15-minute. Binance had a wall at that high at 53, or I think 53,100. It's got a bit of a wall, you know, and most of these ranges it's putting in, it's just banding them by walls above and below. So the range, will become, if we hold the bottom of the range here, it should become a bit clearer. Another wall, smaller one at 50,500 and one at 50k. So I expect, you know, bounces throughout all these levels, and it's just a question of what strength and what buying we see come in. Coinbase was the same. Coinbase also had a wall at 53,100 up here from when we hit yesterday, and this lower wall has been taken out at 51,000. Again, the walls below are just choppy. 50,900 is a reasonable size one, but it's just choppy, and I mostly use Binance for this anyway. I always look at the other ones just because they can show a bit of interest at times. So for example, Bitfinex, it's taken out this wall, but yeah, there's nothing really new and exciting. And Bitstamp was a bit of a, it's not showing me it now, I think it was yesterday, that was why. So after the bounce yesterday, the first bounce, Bitstamp put a wall in. So again, if you're trying to go long on bounces, it's worth looking at on Tensor charts, which walls have been put in above, because then they might put in for a second or third leg. Just turn off my phone quickly. Yeah, so that's that. And then liquidations, I've loaded the page, but I haven't actually looked at yet. So the Binance Not much on the 3-day because it's been cleaned out on both sides. On the weekly, have some coffee. So yeah, there was a liquidation event at 53,000. So again, not surprising it went up there. It doesn't have to reject where it's looking further to take out liquidations. It just means there's liquidity, so price can head for it. And there's not much below really that can be seen even on the weekly now. And the monthly, I've never looked at the monthly before actually. I don't normally go up this high because normally you see enough value on the, but obviously yeah, there was a lot of liquidations up at 53k, judging by the colour versus the green throughout. Yeah, so that's not overly useful on the higher time frame, other than the fact that clearly there's liquidations all the way down. On the 24-hour, 52,700 and then back up at 53,500. So again, could head up. So yeah, looking at this now, actually, possibility of heading up and taking out the high from this morning, or is that last night? And or maybe first thing in the morning, 11:15, and rejecting here. Now I can see there's a supply in there. Have a quick look at that. Something actually, oh yeah, I was looking at last night, which I thought we might get to. So there is a 10-minute untested up here. So if we come up and take out this high, you can look for a rejection at this 10-minute, at least for a scalp. For safety's sake, you can then look for, if ideally for it to reject, potentially could close back below this high from the end of yesterday, and then look for the short. Yeah, these are for early shorts. Obviously, like I said, the structure is still within range, so there's no reason it's not going to go back up again. I think there's a local hourly demands on the last down move, sorry, hourly supply. So, you know, may not even get past there, but I tend to want to sell, you know, after it's taken stops and or at a premium. So possibly in here you could see a rejection on this. And then yeah, that would take out some of those lower liquidations. Let's just have a look at Bybit quickly. And I'm going to light a cigarette quickly as well. Bybit's got a lot more liquidations on that. So all through that mid 53k and then above the high as of yesterday. So yeah, I think this is a decent place to look for a short if we're going to make a lower high, but bear in mind that is a big if because we're still holding the bottom of the range. If we break down the range and then retest there, then I'm more inclined to look for shorts. Oh, and the other thing that potentially makes me more inclined to look for shorts is quite a clean 12-hour supply and quite a more obvious break of range on CME. So I think, yeah, you could start to look for shorts towards, sensibly would be more towards the upper, because then you can have a tighter stop. But maybe from 52-ish, based on what CME is looking like. If we get the retest, let me just think one moment. So I was going to see what the premium is. So normally also, that's interesting. Okay, so the premium on CME is something I've kind of been monitoring a little bit, because it seems like when it drops off, and I never seem to get this look at this quite at the right time to actually see if the drop off happens before the drop or the drop happens before the drop off. But previously there was a $300 premium on CME, so CME price was 300 higher than the normal exchanges, and you can see now it's 51,100. And our exchanges are 51,150, so it's dropped from 300 down to 50, or down to 30 even. So it's a big drop, so i.e. CME isn't pushing the price up like it was previously. Whether that happened, unfortunately I wasn't checking yesterday, so whether that happened I could go back at the lower time frame candles, which I might do later, and see whether we could see that in yesterday's drop, or whether it's come later, like once the drops happen, so i.e. is it a leading indicator or not. But yeah, that's interesting. So it's showing CME is not driving the price so much. On the spot buying, I did notice the day before yesterday there was a lot of, and there has recently been a lot more action on Kraken, a lot more buying in large quantities on spot. and obviously Coinbase. So Coinbase, we've still got our CBD rising even though the price is falling, but the aggregated CBD for spot is following price. So Binance is getting the selling, which is holding the price down. Looking at open interest, again, I skimmed through all those before starting this, and for the most part, the drop yesterday just stopped out a lot of longs. There are some shorts going in now, but no longs are really going in at the moment, even though we see stablecoin margin going up. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. Maybe OKEX, because I didn't look at that. And I'm not sure which of these is bigger anyway, coin margined or stablecoin margined. But the coin margined has been dropping along with price, which I guess is a good sign, because it's showing that we're not increasing shorts while the price is dropping, i.e. giving it fuel to go back up again. But then the stablecoin margin is going up, so a bit hit and miss on that. So yeah, there's not much really definitive there for me, other than Coinbase is still apparently continuing to buy as price is dropping. And then, like I say, Kraken had quite a lot of action lately, but I didn't look yesterday, so I don't know whether that's died off and that's why we're getting the drop now. Yeah, so that's that on Bitcoin. So the zones of interest I pointed out already here, and then I haven't got it marked on here, but the next one would be down there, like the retest of that monthly breakout level and broken 4-hour there, and also where this lower CME gap is, which I haven't got marked in for some reason. Let's check. Was marked in, so I don't know where it's disappeared off to, but let me just check, see if I can find it. Or am I going crazy and there just wasn't one? Oh no, it's down here, yeah. So, very small gap that was left there, 47,810. So yeah, that would be the lower. Although actually it's still a little bit higher. Let me just check my levels here, because I think yeah, 48.2. Yeah, it possibly should go lower. Oh, it was because of the monthly swing point there. But yeah, like I say, this isn't necessarily a fine art anyway, because once it starts getting into here, then it could just stop on any lows that it wants to. But yeah, just be aware on this that CME gap is slightly lower. On the, need to do that. Just pull it out. 47,800 mark, which is in this lower consolidation. So we could again go through this down to this 4-hour below. The moment I'll just leave that in there, because that's that monthly breakout level. But I mean, like I said, this is this whole area that you could really be looking at. If we start getting below this top section here and the 49.50 area, then I'll just be slightly wary about knife catching anything, quite honestly. Anyway, it does seem like we're drifting a bit lower now. Ether, moving on, is basically doing what I said in the last update. Haven't looked at this properly yet. So in the last update on Ether, the zones of interest were taking out this monthly high at the orange dashed line, the monthly level and the psychological level around 3k, and then this 3-day, and I think there's a 5-day in there as well, just above. So I had that marked out as a possible short, and that's what's seeming to happen so far. And then this orange line wasn't me projecting, it was me just going if. So we've got an immediate daily demand in here, so obviously we need to see that break down for this higher time frame short to potentially play out. So it doesn't mean I think this is going to break down. This is like if it breaks down, then potentially I'd look at a long at the next daily, just because if you do make a reversal, you'd be inclined to break through one zone. And then if we'd made daily supply, any sort of supply in here, then I'd look for that second bigger short. But again, like Bitcoin, you know, this has so many zones all the way up, and is it just gonna, if it does come down, if it does want to come down on a bigger move, is it just gonna plow through all of them when there's that many? But as you can see here, you know, when you've got 1, 2, 3 consolidation, when the wicks come down, it's actually taken them all out in this case. So, you know, it's very possible that if we do start coming down, we get a liquidation wick. But anyway, still very early days on that. We didn't create any new daily demand or anything. We did create a 12-hour demand, so that's still just about holding here. But looking a little bit ropey, and may flip itself into 12-hour supply in the next 20 minutes if we close below there. So again, there's possibility of looking for shorts of these on the mid time frames, whilst being conscious we're obviously in a big uptrend, that people are pretty bullish on Ether because of the ETH situation. The other benefit or potential benefit of not longing this first section is that the Korean pair doesn't really have much in there, or the Korean pair, because of the real push on the Korean premium, Korea's come up quite a lot higher than this daily zone, so it is possible that this takes out the daily zone whilst Korea holds the immediate daily zone. CME, we have a close in that first daily zone, 2800, so it's again not unreasonable for us to expect to get down here to fill that gap at least. And then again, testing the high would take us a little bit lower, potentially into the next daily demand on that. This also has a weekly demand at 2500, so again, those are the bigger zones I look at. So again, my last video I covered that in more detail, so I've gone slightly conservative on this on the 3-day inside this 2-weekly zone, but we could equally get a bounce just off the top of that. And again, just looking at zone to zone, and if the zone breaks, if the weekly zone breaks, then we'll start thinking about flipping short. But again, the main thing to be conscious of on Ether while everybody's super bullish is that we are still in this monthly supply that I've talked about a number of times. We got that initial rejection off it, didn't break demand, so now have gone higher inside it, but we haven't taken it out yet. We're quite close on the Korean pair, but the US dollar pair is a long way to go before it actually takes out the entire monthly supply. The BTC pair, and again, you may recall that if you watched my last video, that while again everybody's very bullish on this, and there's potentially reasons to be bullish because we've done this swing failure of the major low, let's go to a higher time frame. You know, we took out stops on this major low and went into a 3-day demand, got the really good reaction off it. So now we're really just looking, and you know, but rejected in weekly supply. Has made weekly demand, which I was hoping would get tested yesterday, but didn't, or the day before. So we didn't get that down move here. May come, you know, these, when I do these projections, again, they don't have to be in order. It's more that I'm expecting a reaction there and I'm expecting a reaction here. But the main thing I was looking at, and I've set an alert for this, at least the 12-hour, and then just to watch in here what kind of a reaction we get, or if we do just plow straight through it. If we plow straight through it, then sure, I'm happy to be a bit more bullish, although we do have a 2-month supply immediately above. The main issue I had was, and I think I've saved the drawings, bars pattern, was this. So this is the 2019 drop, and it was a lot more volatile and aggressive, but you can see when it hits the first low and it does the big pump, and then the second test it doesn't hold, and that's when it gets the bigger drop, and that is probably worryingly similar to what the price action is looking like right now. And also given Ether US dollar has come up so much, like it wouldn't, like everybody sort of seems to think Ether's going to be super strong, and yes, possibly Ether's going to go to 10k against Bitcoin with the ETFs, you never know, but just be conscious that just because we've had this up move, we still need to confirm an uptrend. So as of any reversal, what you're looking for, and we've got sort of part of that pattern for sure, the last drop, break structure, make a higher high over there, retest, but we still need the second high to be put in to confirm higher low, and then higher high, higher high. And we haven't done this final leg for confirmation yet, nor have we got through, need to back out that far, nor have we got through significant supply. So while we've got that structure on the lower time frames, from a weekly perspective, yes, we've made weekly demand, but it's not a solid weekly demand. This is just a range within this last drop. So really, we're still fighting, you know, and that's the weekly that we rejected from. This is the last down move on the weekly. So this hasn't confirmed a move into an uptrend on a weekly. And again, but there are things that it needs to do or can do to make it more solid, and that would be bouncing here and or just going straight through this zone. But yeah, I'm not quite as bullish as everybody else is on the ETH BTC pair, at least, just because of just looking at that structure. And like I say, so I'll go back and show the 2019 actually, so you can see it without just the bars pattern. But you can see that similarity. I mean, it was a lot more aggressive on the drop and a lot more volatile here. And but yeah, there's that bounce, there's the test that we've had a couple of days ago, and we're sort of, if we're comparing, we're in here, around here now. So yeah, looking for a possibility of a rejection in that supply that we're currently experiencing, or we're just below now, and then we get that second drop down, so it's that sort of broadening wedge, which I have drawn here. So I hope you can see the similarities there, or if you've got any comments as to why I'm completely wrong about that, feel free. There are some, like I said, there are some differences. So that this is better because it took out the low at the lows, it took out a prior low, whereas the 2019 PA hadn't. Yeah, it's just all these things to be aware of when you're trying to make a decision which direction to trade. So Ether, like I say, may create a 12-hour supply in the next 15 minutes. It's already got 2-hour up the top here. So again, if it comes back up to the 3K level, you're looking for a rejection up there for a next possible short entry around this kind of area. And it would be preferable if it breaks this demand first, but doesn't reach any higher time frame demand below. But those are some scalp entries for you on that. Let me see what I've got on the detailed chart, if I had any. I haven't fully aligned these as well as I could have done as yet, but mainly wanted to do this video just to look at the majors, to be honest. So yeah, 1 day demand and then the arrow at the 4-hour, and again it's just being slightly more conservative based on so this, again, the waves just aren't clear on this because of this mess, but this is the last better consolidation that we had. So if I treat that as the bottom of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up move, then that's hence why I've drawn that on the other chart, that we could get this move through either from here and then reject, or through there and then something more like that. But again, we cross that bridge when we come to it. That's very much jumping ahead when you look at the structure here. We could still very easily go back up from here. We could still very easily break the high from here. So again, we just need to look for that confirmation that we're going to A, come through demand, B, create new supply, C, reject new supply, and then form lower highs on the lower time frames in order to get into potential shorts. For positioning for longs, yeah, like I say, this was like trying to be slightly more conservative entry because this is in the discount of the, at least the more immediate range. If I draw more local, so if I draw the most recent up move, to update my fibs, actually they're slightly too high. Sometimes I pre-position my fibs where I think the high will be before, so I did consider that this could go very slightly higher up to this 2-week swing point at 30.42, which is what I think I put on the alert for this, and it is still slightly below that. So again, yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't look for a long in here on this 60 fib. You know, it's a daily demand, and let me just check where that CME close is coming in at 2800. I think there's no premium or discount on this. There tends not to be, so maybe slightly lower. So yeah, this 4-hour I think is a reasonable 27.89, a reasonable area to look for a long in the first instance. And then if we come through this, next zone is below in the daily in the 26s, and then but if we came to there, then I'd be more inclined to look for shorts. And you know, even if we don't drop lower, but even if we just create a much larger range here before it decides what to do, like I don't necessarily think we're going to suddenly have a COVID style dump as of tomorrow. Yeah, so that's Ether. And then let's move on to the majors. So I haven't really updated these for a while, either for myself or for anybody else, mainly because not much had changed, but also because the levels just became unclear. So as I talk about EOS being a top signal, and EOS has just been in this, I originally had alerted this 5-day supply, and I think we did get a correction and a retracement on Bitcoin when this hit, and it was in conjunction with other indicators I have for top signals. But I always said on this, this was the most aggressive. If it was going to reject off the bottom of here, it's still within the same zone and it's still just been creeping up. And then my preference actually was for it to get up to this 2-day. So when I look from a confluence perspective, and that's the reason I look at both the old majors and new majors, they just haven't been very clear to me where the rejections are going to be. Thus, I haven't thought, I've kind of been glancing at them, but thought they're not massively worth updating. But now I will have a look. I might just start with Litecoin, and I'm going to have a look at the BTC pairs as well. So this is going to be slightly longer, but I will timestamp. So max alts. But yeah, I just want to see what the high time frames are looking like now. Because the other thing with a lot of the alts is that the ones that have moved, which are not these ones, are likely to create monthly demand in many cases, unless we have a big dump in the next 7 days, which is entirely possible. So that'll be interesting. If they do create monthly demand, then potentially we are going to have a much bigger alt season. Actually, one thing I haven't looked at, let me just have a quick look again at the totals before I move on to the majors. I go back into, see the US dollar dominance is starting to improve there. So I did look at these in the last video, but frankly I can't really remember. So okay, so we've got a couple of 3-day supplies on this. I think, yeah, so total again, so total's in the monthly supply. It's not as strong as Bitcoin is, which is sort of coming to the top of this, or has come through it actually, is more up here, but obviously then alts and Ether are relatively weaker. It's in a 3-day there, and then we've got another monthly level here, so again, not really surprising. There's the monthly level that we're seeing some sort of retracement now. May create that monthly, I don't think Bitcoin has a monthly demand, but I should probably check that. But yeah, may create a monthly demand here, but is already a 3-week, 2-week. So again, not surprising to have a retracement, and we'll be looking for it to hold this kind of zone. Take some of these out. We'll be looking for it to hold this zone if it comes back for a test this deep. And again, so this is a higher time frame. Again, that would mean Bitcoin coming back to the 40s, where the 2-3 week demand is on that. So yeah, that's total 2. So we're still total 2. So we've just come over this daily now. So I'm going to delete that. Again, wouldn't have minded this slightly higher, but it did quite nicely match the top of the channel, and I haven't just drawn that in randomly. This is the bottom of the channel here, and then you just align that with this candle over here. Just, it doesn't, I haven't got it extended across the entire chart because then it confuses me. So it has tapped the top of the channel, but again, kind of would prefer it to hit the monthly up here, which could again mean more of a move on alts and Ether, but less of a move on Bitcoin. But is some sort of a resistance there. At least it obviously has wicks there, so I don't know the level of accuracy on these. Total 3 is going to be much the same, but is still in this daily supply again with that slightly relative weakness of alts, at least the larger alts anyway. But again, 2-3 week demand here, so don't know, I could still see alts having more of a move. Alts, I've always said I kind of prefer to be up here. But again, still has the channel here, and is slightly more dubious as to whether it's breaking out of that channel at this point. And so alts I've been looking at, I'm really just looking to see if they're going to break down. So a lot of them are now starting to test local demands, either 4-hour, 8-hour, even daily in some cases, but and then the weaker ones have gone lower. But we got a bounce yesterday, they're having a second test today, and certainly if Bitcoin goes down, they will be going down. But at the moment, I didn't mean to go into BTC dominance. At the moment, still getting that strength on alts. Also, it's still not showing the breakdown. So that red level will be the monthly demand. This is the others chart, which is crypto excluding top 10, the total market cap excluding top 10. So again, like I say, I could see it still running a bit higher into here, but it's certainly slowed down significantly. So are we going to get consolidation through here and push through, or are we just going to bounce up into there and then drop? And that would be where I'd be looking to long alts potentially for the next leg. And again, I've commented a few times on this that yes, we can be super bullish, and yes, we might do this, but there is also a possibility we do a triangle before an up move, and there is also a possibility we do a zigzag before an up move. And this is actually my preferred. This would be, and not because I'm bearish and I really want it to drop, but just from a structural perspective, we have a yearly and a 6-month zone down here that hasn't been tested. And while it's always nice to think we won't test it, and perhaps we won't, and we did just retest off the high here. So, you know, it is a reasonable place to consider that we're just going to test. But again, you can see that at least for 2018, we had a bounce and then we had a retracement. Even if we ignore the COVID dump, we still had a retracement. We still would have made a triangle before the next up move. And here we've had the bounce, but we haven't really had any significant retracement of that bounce so far. And we haven't really got enough history going back, but even here it looks to some extent like we've had a bounce and then a retracement of the bounce. So, and this just from a, if we were to come into yearly, that would just fit more nicely with my supply demand technique, I guess, that I use. Okay, so that's that. Back to Litecoin. So we had a 2-week supply, which we had an initial short off, I think, when it was a weekly, and then a second one, and it's still holding that. I think that was, they had a slightly more aggressive one in there. And Litecoin, I've always said I don't particularly want to trade anything with, because, and I'm going to be quick on this in updating, because we're just in this sort of messy consolidation. We had the bounce along with the rest of the market, but it didn't really go very far, despite the fact Grayscale Litecoin went very far. Litecoin hasn't really done an awful lot. We do have a 2-month demand. We do have a bounce at the lows off the annual, so I like that, but, you know, obviously it's had the bull run off that annual bounce. But this is just, obviously I'm going to take my mess off it, but you can see this is just sort of weak and messy, really. So yes, it could be accumulating, but it could also equally be distributing. And there's no clean zones now, but just this sort of giant, can't really call it a triangle because this is a higher high, but just messy. And the LTC BTC pair is just at all-time low, so again, not a particularly useful indicator. You know, we watched that bounce there and it came up to weekly supply, but has just been coming down ever since then. So Litecoin not very useful from a confluence perspective. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, the confluence that I normally look for on these is not useful because we're not doing anything significant and there's no strong supply or demand for me to consider. So this now does have a 3-day supply in there, and is coming back into 3-day demand, but just very tight in the range. So again, you can look for a retest and possible short in here, but it's not overly high probability. And again, just being conscious, we are still coming off 2-month demand, so I think I've touched on that. So we are coming off 2-month demand. However, you know, we've had that initial bounce and it really just didn't get very high. And then the deep retracement. So, you know, if we were strong, we would have expected to hold here and push, but we haven't. And we're now just looking at this sort of fairly nasty downward move. You know, we are leaving some stops up here, which I guess could be promising, but yeah, not loving that for any sort of trade really. Low probability 3-day short there if you want one. Let's see what the 2-day and daily are doing. Yeah, there's just not really much to write home about on that, and not overly high probability. Ripple, So Ripple's just been messing around it. So I had an alert here for this weekly supply, which you would have seen if you've watched previous videos. Again, it hasn't got further than that, consolidated in there for a while and went up to the 5-day inside. I had, you know, if it ran through it, I had another higher one at the 2-week, 3-week above. Ripple, so yeah, and again, just reiterating what I said previously on Ripple, so we've got this monthly and 3 monthly demand, in fact. So just looking at that bigger structure, we made a 3-month demand, made a tiny bounce off it, and then a bigger bounce with the wick, made another 3-month demand, but again, we're just not getting really much traction off that. And when you look at the strength that we get off these previous moves, it just kind of makes me feel like we've had this big drop and this is just corrective. So this, I would really want the long down in here. I think I deleted off the alert because I was running out. From a monthly perspective, what this is, 1-day demand, I might take that out, just have a look at my alerts in a minute. There's a monthly demand down here, so I'd be inclined if you can get a swing failure. I was 3rd time lucky because I've had this alerted 3 times, or now it's the 3rd time, but it wicked just above on this first wick and then made a slightly higher low here rather than, but I would like to see those 2 wicks taken out before looking for a possible long on this. And then, but also my macro view on this is really that we're probably going to come down here. Obviously we need Bitcoin to die off for that to happen. BTC pair, just quickly, again, looking pretty ugly. So we have a 3-month supply put in up here, which I've had alerted just for confluence perspective. It's coming down, and I also had this 3-day demand alerted down here. The alert's gone, but we haven't actually hit the zone yet. So that's kind of the only thing that might make me slightly more interested in Ripple is if we do hold this 3-day in here. But it's still got a bit lower to test. But again, looking at all the other BTC pairs, they're all sort of somewhere down here. So not really overly confident that'll hold. And again, so from a structural perspective, you know, these are the buyers that push this move, and this move was unable to break that supply. So while it's possible we've got a lot of accumulation in here, it's possible this is just a manipulation of all the buyers from here, and then we're just going to run straight back up through. So that's what I would want to watch out for. But again, you want to see the low time frames confirm that. I'm going to reset this alert. There. So yeah, just something to watch and be aware of if we do come down a little bit lower on that. We've got some weekly supply above, so again, we just want to see some real strength coming off that, but then there is this 3-month supply, not that much higher, so it's a bit of a tough one. And it's 3-month supply, but also weak supply unless we see it break all this demand. So back to the US dollar chart. So like I say, we've got this rejection off the weekly in here. Is there any short entry I want to add? So I've got this alert that I talked about for the monthly down here. Oh, and I did have an alert for the daily locally. So I will leave that because you never know, like if the market still remains strong. So we're probably going to make a 2-day supply on this here. Unless we have bounced them in today, it's still got a fair way to go, but we've got a 2-day demand in here. But again, so while we have these local demands in here, they're not overly high probability because we haven't broken a higher time frame supply. So while you can look to long, 526 off this 2-day or off the daily at the bottom, which I previously had alerted on the retest of these lows, they're not high probability. Something like that. Not high probability for observation. But yeah, a lot of it just depends, if we're going to get a corrective bounce, and maybe it's like, I'm not overly confident we're going to get a higher high off this bounce, I guess but it doesn't mean we're not going to get a corrective bounce that could be tradable. At least it's slightly nicer looking than Litecoin. And the other reason for potentially looking for longs on this is we do still have all this monthly demand. So while I hate it and I think it looks super choppy and messy and they're not strong monthly demands, they do still exist. So it is worth keeping an eye out for possible longs towards the bottom of this up move, more aggressively coming in now. But yeah, we'll see. And I won't put, I might put a short in. So if we do get a big drop today and it runs through here, I might put a short in back at this 2-day supply. But for now, I'll leave that short up there. BCH. So BCH did have a nice rejection. So I had a 12-hour supply, which I've had this alert for you since God knows how long. So BCH, again, something I was wary of because on the short side, because it has, again, monthly demand, but when it came up and closed over it, it then went right down to the bottom, which BCH is inclined to do, and is what really threw me off down at these lows here that had made this monthly demand. And it threw a wick almost to the bottom of it, and the massive move came. So like I was waiting for the move, and then it just did typical, I was going to say crypto style, but it's probably any market style, threw a big wick before the actual pump. BCH makes me slightly nervous with all these wicks it's coming down here, so the possibility of it throwing a giant wick down to there I think is fairly high, so that's hence why I have that entry there. But again, this is not similar to how I just described in Ripple. It's not a strong weekly demand. Yes, we're in this bigger up move, but this weekly demand hasn't proven that it can break supply. So would really want to see the wick down, like it being a wick, and a close back up in that range, particularly because it's going to break a monthly demand. If it does come through here, it needs to break it only on a wick and then close back up inside. But yeah, there's no reason why you can't just be immediately a little more bullish on this because of that monthly demand. And it is building, and while I don't like the stops under here, we can see these patterns build and then take off. So again, very slow off this rejection, but we do now have a 3 weekly demand in here. So again, so that's local structure is still up. We've still got this monthly, we've still got a 3 weekly, a week 3 weekly because it hasn't closed higher, sitting on top. Overall, we're coming out a monthly supply and an annual supply. So the macro structure is still ropey. And I would still, it's similar to when I was talking about the others chart and total 3, it's still like those tests down at these lower proper demands for more confidence rather than a sort of floating retest in the middle here, which God knows what it's picked up. Some of the wicks I get and wires stop there, I have no idea. So yeah, we'll see, but again, just alerted. So we're in a 3 week demand now, 2 week, weekly, nothing new. 5 day. I still have to look at 5 day because we're getting such slow PA. Okay, so this I guess was a more aggressive long entry, 1 day demand inside 3 week. There is a weekly at the bottom here, so it's possible we come lower here, but that's the more aggressive entry. What I don't like on this now is, again, it's probably going to get a 2 day. It has a 2 day supply in there actually. And it's probably going to make another 2 day supply. But again, that local structure is still up off a daily, so there is no reason why you shouldn't look for a long on that daily. And failing that, possibly here on this weekly. But be conscious of these stops. Keep your stop well out of the way, either much deeper or much tighter, so you don't get caught up in any slippage if this drops. So Bitcoin's dropping a bit again now, taking out the lows. Interesting to see if it will bounce here. But yeah, at least try and get an entry on that local demand, and then just see what happens when it gets back into those new supplies. BTC pair I think is also relatively ugly, or actually it's not horrendous, but just sort of drift of death. It's in the higher time frame, so it's coming out of the 3 month supply here, and it's coming back in deep into 3 month demand, 2 months in there as well, and it's made a monthly supply. So we had a monthly supply made up here which wasn't tested. We've got a new monthly supply in here, which has come off. So again, the BTC pair isn't really something I want to look at for longs at the moment, but if the market does hold for now. So we might end up with a 2-week supply in there. We've also got a weekly. So yeah, BTC pair isn't really supporting buying of BCH right now. Again, we could get, if we get that bigger drop into this weekly, then I'd be much more inclined. It's very like similar to the BTC pair, sorry, the US dollar pair. We had this big pump, and then if we get the retest at the origin of the pump, all the better. But the US dollar pair hasn't had that test at the origin of the pump, nor is it anywhere near it, which just makes me slightly nervous. With all these stops below. But anyway, yeah, we'll just see. I'm not going to put an entry there. We'll just see what the reaction is off the immediate demand if we get there. And so then, yeah, with all of these, if I see demand start to break, then I'll start putting in more aggressive local shorts. But again, much like Bitcoin, until I actually see demand break. I can see we've wicked off the low on Bitcoin now and Ether. But until I see demand start to break, I don't really want to put in aggressive shorts unless we're in bigger supply. So Ripple, for example, I might be more inclined to, but Litecoin and BCH, Litecoin's just a mess, and then BCH is still sort of fairly strong. A bit of cold coffee quickly. EOS, like I said at the start of this is normally sort of my top signal, and it hadn't really gone anywhere I want, so we do have this 2-week demand, which is what's holding. So again, you know, it's still in a local upward structure, but it's still coming off 3-month supply at the highs. So my bigger bias is still down, and then I want to see the test at the lower levels to see if this 3-month is going to play out. So the 3-month playing out means, you know, that's our, show the 3-month chart. Yeah, so the 3-month playing out basically means that should just break the low. But obviously at some point that has to not happen and we have to reverse structure. What we would prefer to see happen is it to break the low on a wick. And I do actually have an alert down here because this is all-time low on EOS. So we could break it on a wick and then we could start looking at up move. But even here you see, you know, that low was broken on a wick, but it didn't manage to break out. It's still rejected at the top of the last down move. So, you know, EOS is still in this bigger down structure, and yes, it's got a 3-week demand and another one below. But again, you can see here it had a 3-week demand, had a 3-week demand here. This one wicked through, tried to go higher, failed, and then didn't hold the low one either. So the bigger structure, that 3-month, is saying down. But I set the alerts, and then the alerts are just, so when I set all the alerts I set are either high probability or low probability, and that just isn't. I'm going to take this 5-day out now because it's more messy than I want it to be. This is not a high probability bounce, nor is this a high probability bounce because we've got 3-month supply above. However, on many alts with similar structure, we've seen very strong bounces off these which have gone through the monthly supply. So obviously at some stage, price is likely to get more bullish and break structure, or at least on some coins, not all of them. But again, until it's happened, we can't be overly confident of it. So yeah, so I've still got an alert down there. We're still holding this 3-week. We obviously went higher in this 5-day than I wanted and have come back up and tested weekly supply up there. We have a 5-day demand here, which I will not be alerting. So again, the reason I'm not alerting this is because I haven't broken the last down move in this local structure. Yes, still holding demand, but would want that initial push to break this, and then I'd be inclined to look for longing a retest. Rightly or wrongly, there is a 4-day in there. I'm trying not to mark all the 4 days and 5 days because it's not something I ever did, and 4 days tend to coincide with 2 days. So again, might create, so it's in a 2-day demand at the moment, but still deep inside it. Again, looks a little bit like Ether and Bitcoin, might create a 2-day supply here. Lots of wicks through here. So again, like I'd really prefer this to be down here to look for longs on this, and up here to look for shorts now. Again, might be, given with weekly supply, I just would have preferred it to be up here before looking for shorts on the retest. So again, I'll have a look at these in the next couple of days, and maybe I'll add some local shorts if we start looking like we're starting to break down some of this. But yeah, certainly don't want to put any local longs in here, even if we do have an untested 5-day, just because it's too messy and because I suspect if it does drop, this will wick. And the BTC pair on this, did I look at that already? I don't think so. Is following this nice down channel forever, but you know, really is in this epic wedge. People call this a falling wedge, so it's like, so that was just a joke. This to me is just a downtrend, not a falling wedge like it's bullish. People call this a falling wedge like it looks like it's bullish, and I don't know what remotely they could see in that makes it look bullish, but it is, you know, at the bottom of that. And it's a bit mean because I've got the low just on this low, but yeah, obviously there's not anything here that's going to make you want to buy it, and there is a new monthly supply in there. So I'm going to throw that on there. So I would have liked to have my EOS top signal more cleanly. So maybe we're not at a top on Bitcoin yet. I'm going to move this alert down to here. Should be monthly supply, yeah, because there's now a more local monthly supply, because that would be something I'd watch. And then obviously if it breaks that, then we can look for a bigger up move, potentially up to the 6 month. That would be, it's a long way off, and a long optimistic, over optimistic view given months and months of downtrend. Wonder if it's actually, we don't even have like sort of enough to be able to see divergence at these lows or anything like that. Yeah, no, there's really nothing that makes me want to long that. And similarly, yes, you can get scalps on the US dollar pair, but again, you know, it made an annual supply, rejected it locally, then made a, my charts are so messy, I hope anybody can actually read this, made a 3-month supply and has rejected it here. So, you know, really the bigger structure is short this to hell. But obviously it has bounces in the interim, so there's no reason why I can't be able to look for a long around here, just in case we are seeing a bottom of some description. But yeah, so for now I'm just going to leave the short up there on that. But yeah, so as you can see, from a confluence perspective across all of these charts, I just don't love, they're just not clear. And it's when we have the clarity is when we tend to see the bigger moves on Bitcoin. Yeah, I just don't have that clarity, so maybe we're just going to get a lot of sideways chop on Bitcoin for some extended period of time. Maybe these will be allowed to run a bit higher. You know, Litecoin I'd really like all the way up here, but I just don't at the moment see that happening. Well, there's no demand that makes me think that's a confident move. And yeah, from the perspective of seeing Bitcoin move, then Ether move, then majors move. The majors haven't moved. The alts moved, but the other alts, the smaller alts, but the majors haven't moved this time, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, so anyway, I think that's about it. I'm going to do a new video for the new majors, just so this is, you know, this is just pushing an hour, so just so I can have a bit of a break, and then I'll do this, and I'll upload this, and then I'll do a second video. But yeah, so in a quick summary, Ripple, 1-day demand there is not high probability. Much prefer if we have a big dump down into monthly down here. Litecoin, moving things around. Litecoin just messy, don't like it. Potentially look for a short off 3-day supply there if you get something local. BCH is the one obviously that currently looks stronger but still is just messy and choppy, so unless it's just going to do a random takeoff move, which is possible because we have had a strong candle in February, but you know, we've had strong candles before and they just retrace in full. But yeah, we'll look at this daily demand, and if we get a bounce off there, great, and even this 3-week here, so keep an eye on BCH because you never know. And it has had a few hits, but I'd still prefer, again, if that Bitcoin pair had hit slightly lower first. So I'll see if those alerts come in conjunction with each other if we get a bit of a drop on BCH, and then EOS, just leave it alone unless we get up here, because that bigger structure is still very much down. Even down here is not a high probability long. So yeah, that's that. I hope that's of some use. So if Bitcoin's doing anything while we're still here, that back to the US dollar chart. still need to run. So I am intending on doing a. So we've got yeah, just a swing fail of the lows and a bounce now. So it has taken out that 3-day though. So again, we're just looking for the close. Is this bounce is it just a swing fail of the range, and now we're just gonna go straight back up again? Korea hasn't quite, it's still mid-range, so Korea's still stronger. Again, we're getting that bounce potentially off these wicks on CME, but would like that a bit lower as well. So anyway, just looking at the retest now, we will have 12 hours supply put in on a lot of the stuff. I mean, there's an 8-hour supply already, so I've already told you where to look for shorts on that, on those or possible rejections. Around the 53k area, so that's conservative towards that 10-minute at the top. But yeah, just be conscious that this hasn't hit this 3-day where I wanted it, nor has Bitcoin hit this 3-day where I wanted it, and there is no reason, yes, while the timeframes can give you scalps, you know, there's no reason we're not going to have some extended consolidation like this. It would be really nice to see that diamond pattern play out. Coming down, bounce here, reject here, down to here, and then the bigger up move. That would be very nice. But anyway, cross that bridge when we come to it. Hope that's of some help. And let me know in chat if there's any questions as well.